Select Board meeting, February 6th, starting at 6:30.
February 6th.
Oh, sorry, that's what my agenda says. February 20th.
Can we go back?
No, we cannot go back. February 20th, Select Board agenda. We will start with, does anybody have anything they want to move around on the agenda? Okay, and now we'll move to public comment on non-agenda items. John, state your name and turn on the microphone, please,
Oh, yes.
just in case people don't know you.
It's been a while. Good evening, I'm John French on 23 John Street, citizen of the town of Camden. First thing, I'd like to comment on a good thing before I say anything else. Town looked very nice this year. For the holidays, I thought it looked very nice. I don't know if anybody said anything, but really looked outstanding. So, having said that, I want him here to ask what's going on between Camden and Rockport. I know there's a lot going on. You got two different EMS programs going. You've got sewer problems that seem to be going 9 different directions. We've spent a lot of time, a lot of years working together, doing a lot of good things. And I hate to see us lose that cooperation between the communities. I think that the opportunity is there to do something together. I mean, I'm hearing $1 million plus budgets for both towns. I saw the amount that Rockport's projecting of $278 per household just from their EMS program. And that's before any school budget was put in or the town budget. And I haven't heard what Camden's projections are. But there's got to be a way that we can do things together. We've worked together for a lot of years, mutual aid. We always bought equipment, and so that each town had the specialized equipment, so we weren't paying $900,000 or whatever for a truck. It made sense. I know everybody's got, I don't know everything that's going on, and that's why I'm kind of hesitant to being here, because I don't know all the stuff I used to know. And so, but I don't like what I'm hearing, and I think that we need to make the effort to cooperate between the two communities. I really do. I know the sewer is big enough. I don't care what people say. That sewer is big enough. It was built for 6 working mills, which never came online because when it was finished, the mills had all but the tannery had shut down. So, I mean, the ability to do the process that water is there. If there's an issue with the water getting into the harbor, figure it out. I mean, Portland figured it out. They spent some money. Yes, they put 1 million gallon tanks in to put the overflow in, and that way they could deal with it after the storm. I don't know all the answers. I'm not pretending to know all the answers. I just want to make sure that everybody's doing everything they can to make sure that we do it right and do it between the towns together. And I honestly feel that the county needs to step up. I've said this many times to many of you. And because we got an opportunity here, because we're all getting older. I'm one of them. And we need ambulances. We need the the EMS and the paramedics and all of that. So there's 18 communities in this county. And we can make a program that everybody could pay for it. So not Camden, Rockport, Rockland, and St. George paying for the lion's share. So I hope I didn't step out of bounds. I don't like to come up here like this anymore because I'd had my say, as I said, and it's your turn to shine. But I just couldn't let it go. I had to ask, what was going on. So I know you can't comment tonight. I don't expect you to, but that's all I have, and I appreciate it. Thank you all for serving. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, John. Does anybody else have any comments? Yes.
Hi, my name is Barry King. Jennifer Martin and I have the schooner Mary Day, Grayson, Camden Harbor. And I'm here tonight to comment about some inconsistencies we're finding with the recent rate increase in our passenger vessel license agreement. The fee, according to the agreement, is supposed to be $4,200 per year. This year, that rate went up 7% to $4,500. Don't check my math, please. But it's the very last line in the agreement says that the select board is certainly within its rights and wisdom to amend the agreement, certainly at its sole discretion. But their final few words of that is that any amendment would be made with a 60-day notice to the licensee. And we never received any notice. And it's not about the $300 increase, but it is about this agreement that we've all signed. And I think one of the things that really caught our attention as a finger float holder, well, we have been in the past, we're both from Appleton, and we saw the rate for out-of-town finger float holders go up $1,000 in 1 year. And I'm certain that money is going to be really well spent. But it gave us pause to say, okay, well, if the select board is going to go up $1,000, 40% on a finger float, what's to say that we might not be blindsided by a 40% jump in the Windjammer fees. And, so I think part of this here is a heads up to just say that, we thought we had this agreement that there would be 60 days notice, for changes to the agreement. And I know things slip all the time. So it's, please don't hear this as a complaint, but more of a heads up. We have, only admiration for you folks, maybe pity. I don't know. Well, your job is not an easy one. Granted, and we certainly have, great appreciation for being to keep our vessel here in Camden. But we just wanted to bring that heads up. So.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have somebody look at that and
We can
perhaps
send out notices.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Great. Okay. I think I saw another hand. Yes.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Stanchoff, and I live at 2 Spring Street in Camden. And yes, I'm related to whatever Stanchoff it is that comes to mind when you hear that name, but mostly by marriage. So like many people here and everywhere these days, I spend quite a lot of time worrying about how we're going to manage to curb our sources of climate change before it's too late. And I'm wondering if it might be time to give Camden residents the opportunity to join other municipalities around the state in taking a stance on federal policy action to address climate change. So I'm just here tonight to let you know that I'll be asking to be on the March 5th agenda to explain a proposed warrant article for the annual town meeting vote, which I understand is by ballot. This year, you don't no longer have an in-person meeting, but and because I need to get your feedback about what my next steps would be to propose an article on that. So the proposed article would be to have the town endorse a federal policy of, like, urge Congress to pass a federal policy of cashback carbon pricing, which is designed to swiftly reduce greenhouse gas emissions by shifting demand away from fossil fuels in an equitable way. So anyway, that's what I'll get you details about and approach you next month.
Could I ask you to email the select board and Audra as well?
Sure.
This might be a discussion that's best held one-on-one. But
Sure.
We'll certainly have a discussion about that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll get you enough that you can understand what the heck
Right.
it is I'm talking.
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
Perfect. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Does anybody have anything?
Yeah, there's a mistake in the minutes. In the minutes, the discussion about the cost benefit analysis in the Megunticook River Citizens Advisory Committee was brought on by Ken Gross, not by Tom Zumwalt.
Okay. So- Janice, you know what she's talking about in there?
It's on page 7. I'll send it to you, Janice. We can just
did
correct it.
speak, though.
He did, but he didn't
Is it
speak
line
about the cost.
299?
It didn't speak about the cost benefit analysis. It's Ken Gross who brought it up.
I forgot exactly how he phrased it.
But I'm happy to check it with.
A lot of detail in the minutes.
I know. Does anybody else have anything else they
That was
need
the
to have
only.
updated, changed?
No.
I would move that we approve the minutes as adjusted by Sophie, or as amended.
Go ahead,
Sure.
second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passage 4-0. We will move on to select board reports. Chris, I'll start with you.
Sure. Since we've last met, we had a good roundtable presentation from various towns that have done some dam removals. And it was good to hear the different towns' perspectives, even though the, dams and rivers are different and elevations might be different. There were some good takeaways. It's something that people are interested in finding out some of the pieces. A couple of the items that I thought were pretty meaningful is one, it worked best in the communities when it was a bottom-up sort of thing from the community of interest. Two, that fish ladders require maintenance too. That was a big point brought up by all the folks who did it. It's not like I know some of the discussion has been around reducing maintenance costs, and it's more of a trade-off, it sounds like. The person from Farmington certainly mentioned the discussions in the community because of things being around for a while, and what was the pushback going to be like. In the end, it seems like they got something a little bit better than what they had before, which was nice to see. But it was also good to see how, the various towns did have discussions. Probably Farmington was probably the most open with the controversy that there was, and it was great to hear. It's too bad that we didn't have more people from town there to see it.
Do we have that on video
Yes, actually,
Yes.
it's posted now. So
on the YouTube channel?
Yep.
Perfect.
Mhm.
I
On
didn't
the-
make
on the
it to that.
website,
So
Yes.
great.
And they didn't have anybody filming the actual speakers though, so you kind of have to, I went to watch it and it's,
Yeah,
you
can see
hear the people and you can
slides
see all the slides, but you have to be prepared to use your imagination with that. I mean, the people introduce themselves. It's like listening to the radio a little
That's
bit.
fine. I can do
With
that
pictures.
while
Yeah,
walking on the
it's
treadmill.
worthwhile. It's worthwhile to do.
No, it was good. I learned stuff from it. It was
Yeah.
worth watching, I think.
Okay. Perfect. Anything else?
Nope. Thank you.
All right, Sophie.
But not a lot more. It was a good roundtable. Thank you, Chris, for the update. No, not a lot more. I think it's the discussion was also interesting in the sense that fish ladder is just like a lesser evil, but basically the benefits, especially for the fish. So lots of food for thought and other things to explore through the committee. But I agree with Chris. It was very, very good roundtable and equally disappointed that we didn't have a better turnover. I could not attend the harbor committee, but I understand you did this morning. So
I did go to that. Yeah.
I'll let you give an update on that.
Allison.
I attended the Library Board of Trustees meeting. A lot of people seem to be traveling this time of year, so there are a bunch of people missing. But Nikki went over who's who at the library, which was interesting. There's some staffing changes. She's going to be retiring, and she's announced that. So they've started a search for her replacement. And Ken Gross is also retiring. Nikki's not until May, I believe, but Ken, I think it's maybe next week. We've already invited him to join the board of the Historical Society, should anybody else be interested. So they talked about the replacements there. They have another assistant director that already works there who will be taking over for Ken in that capacity, and somebody else in the History Center. They also, one of the sort of bigger discussions was the seawall and how they're going to deal with that, or we're going to deal with that. As there always is and always has been, a little bit of confusion about whose responsibility that is. The library, the Harbor Park grounds are in the name of the town of Camden, and the deed specifies that the grounds will be under the control of the Library Board of Trustees. And so that has been, interpreted in different ways. And as new people come onto that board and this board, it's been a while since we've talked about, like, what does that really mean? Does that mean, how much working together do we do? They're responsible for approving or not design choices, certainly. The town does mowing for them. We don't, my understanding is, touch any of the shrubs and things like that. That's done by a specialty pruner. And, the idea being to keep with the design that has been historic there. So, and that all works fine until there's something that might need to be changed or fixed or is going to cost a bunch of money. So the design approval process is, clearly requires the Library Board of Trustees approval, but then who's fiscally responsible, and how does that, how do we go about that? So since, just like us, they've got different things going on. Some of them are more interested in the buildings and grounds versus the library part of it. They have a building committee that has been kind of tasked with looking at the details of the seawall situation. And they had requested to have a meeting with the select board. And we had a discussion about sort of what made sense there. Since we have kind of, just like they've delegated that a little bit to the building committee, we're trying to have the McGonagall River Citizens Advisory Committee bring some comprehensive recommendations. They have a representative on that committee. So there was kind of a discussion about how much of the conversation should occur in that committee. I sort of explained that as a select board, we haven't been doing a deep dive into the seawall situation here. So some of us might feel, we haven't talked about that as a group. We've been waiting to get some information back. So we might not be the best group to be prepared to talk about the seawall. And so I think they understood that. There is a larger issue too, I think they want to talk about, which is just all of the general things with the library grounds and how we go about planning for this. But in terms of the seawall and how it interplays with the dam, I think the consensus was that they're going to reach out to FB Environmental and to Matt Bernier from NOAA and get basically a better understanding, maybe with the Citizens Advisory Committee, get a better understanding of the grant that we currently have. They had been nervous that they needed to start down this path of applying for funding to have an engineer look at this separately. We assured them that no, the funding that we have through this round of funding will cover all of the design and everything for the entirety of the seawall, not just the part that is affected by the dam. But that rests on us coming up with a comprehensive plan all at once. So we don't have funding to only address a little part of the seawall. If we can all work together to come up with a plan that that does provide fish passage in some way and reduces the risk of the seawall to flooding, then that's all covered by this grant. So I think they're going to flesh that out with the Citizens Advisory Committee a little bit, and then at another time, once Tom's back too, we'll look at what would make sense to me with the select board as a.
And I asked FB to reach out to them to make a presentation to the Board of Trustees. So it's already in the works somewhere.
Yeah, it's hard because different people come on the board and off the board, and some have been made aware of things, and can it all go through the Citizens Advisory Committee? Maybe that works fine when there's nothing happening, there's no need to fix something, and then all of a sudden there is a need to do something with the seawall at the library. So there's obviously a heightened level of interest, and waiting until every recommendation from the advisory committee is in might not be useful. So
Right.
I think they kind of felt like they were just waiting to be told what the Citizens Advisory Committee was going to recommend. I said, no, actually what we kind of want is this is an opportunity for everybody in the community to be giving their concerns and saying the things that they want, to be thought of. And the library should be saying, hey, Susan, this is your representative. She should be talking about the things that the library might be concerned with and how we're going to move forward. So don't just sit back and wait until the end of the process. But that'll be an ongoing conversation, sort of trying to make sure that the right people are involved, and whoever wants to be involved can be. And so that was that. We talked, that was most of it. They have another board of trustees appointee that will be coming to us. Had a good little discussion about that. There was consensus that the man's name is Larry Ward. So there seemed to be enthusiasm about that. And then they're also looking for people maybe that have some landscape design knowledge and interest, and maybe some engineering interest. And they're working on kind of rounding out their board and figuring out what are the different skills that they need to have represented. So that was a good meeting. The Camden Rockport Pathways master plan draft is on the website now. I saw that text message went out. You guys have probably been getting a couple of emails here and there. It was encouraging to see that some people read that and gave some comments. And so I've been forwarding those along to the Pathways Committee. And there is a meeting of just the Camden portion of the Pathways Committee tomorrow. The committee as a whole has decided to meet quarterly as a two-town committee, and the other 2 months as individual groups, so that they can, Rockport has some very Rockport specific things they wanted to be working on. So that's that.
All right. So when FB does do the library, it would be a great thing for everybody here to know. I definitely would like to have a update. I don't always get the library meeting notification, so that would be a cool thing to have.
I'm not sure you want to have the whole board there. I mean, if the rest of the board wants to listen in on Zoom, that would be good.
And I think
But
some
I'm
of
not
it's just going to be
sure-
the
but I'm not
same
sure
as
you-
what we got here a little bit, just an overview. And it might make sense to have Matt Bernier too from NOAA explain I don't know exactly what, it almost seemed like their whole board didn't want to be involved.
Right,
So-
but that is going to be an ongoing conversation, and just something that everybody should be aware of, the conversations going on between the library about that seawall, especially before it comes to us and then have to try to cram in. So however anybody would want to view that or go on, library has always been welcoming to whomever wanted to attend those meetings. So anyways. So my update is the planning board met They have discussed multiple changes to the peer ordinance, short-term rentals. February 29th is going to be a very big meeting, public hearing for anybody in the public to attend that has any comments, opinions about anything that is going on. Definitely put that on your calendar to review, especially the short-term rentals. People are very interested in that. I know I've gotten dozens and dozens and emails, and people stop me on the street all the time to talk about that. This is a great time to get your questions answered, or they would direct you to where to find the best answer. Let's see, they have done, that's the planning board. Harbor Committee this morning. What I'm going to say about the Harbor Committee meeting this morning is it would be a great meeting for the select board to go in and watch. It was about an hour-ish. It's just a great meeting for us to understand the importance of the committees and the things that we task them to do, and how everybody's kind of feeling at the moment. They are looking at harbor resilience. That was the end of the meeting. They were talking about a harbor resilience plan. Jeremy announced that he's working towards grants to help with the cost of these things. And let's see.
Can I ask a planning board question or
Sure.
comment just related to that with as we're coming up on ordinance changes, I think, especially for the short-term rental stuff, figuring out a way that collectively with the planning board or with staff, we can help people just understand what this all means. I think it's really easy to lose perspective of how complicated it is. And
Right.
you know, Jeremy starts talking and even the planning board starts talking. I mean, truthfully, the vast majority of people have no idea what any of this means. And I struggle too, after many years of watching. Like, nobody knows what these zones are and what. So I think trying a little harder to come up with, this is something that you've mentioned, Stephanie, like, what is this? Let's take this house as an example and this listing and this, what does this mean for this property, for this person, for this, as examples so that people can understand, because it's all just so general and out there. I know the town always tries really hard to be like neutral. And so we don't want to give too much information trying to sway people, but just to help people understand the basics in like a one-page kind of thing, rather than saying, oh, for the full list of changes, you can look at page 6 in the
So
code.
they are changing or labeling different types of rentals in a little different manner. So
Right.
it is a little complicated, and this is a great meeting to go in. They have, I believe they said that they've posted the new labeling. What's that?
On the front homepage is a news item entitled short-term rental information.
On the front of the website.
Yep, under news items, it's called short-term rental regulation, and it's
Right.
got the links to all of the documents and
Yes.
meetings and everything.
But is it,
The document that is in there explains what each labeling of the rentals will be. And the hearing on February 29th is just a very important meeting for if you have comments. You can obviously email them, email Jeremy. Your comments will be read and noted, or come to the meeting and share your thoughts. And that's what I have to say about all of that. We'll move on to Audra for town manager report.
Sure. So I wish John had stayed for this because the Rockport Select
watch.
Board, yeah, they would like to meet with the Camden Select Board to talk about EMS specifically and figure out how we can all work together more closely on rolling out programs. So speaking to that, and that's something that maybe at the end of the evening, we'd want to talk about trying to schedule. But I do want to caution everyone, this is another update. Budget preparation is currently underway with the first review of the budget committee being on March 7th. So it's just a very challenging time of year to get everybody to meet because we're already meeting a lot.
Yeah, and people go away.
Yeah, so that's, but anyway, they have reached out about that. I do think it's very important. I know it's a very tough time of year to meet with everything that we have going. So we've closed on 2 of the 3 commercial units in the Knox Mill that the town acquired through tax lien foreclosure. So we're closed on C101 and C102. C214 is currently under contract. They asked for an extension to do a little bit more due diligence, but looking very positive with that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so I can't thank Nancy Hughes enough. Thank you, Nancy. We've made really great progress recently on finding some major sources of inflow and infiltration into the collection system on Bayview Street specifically. So we found one single source that was responsible for about 40 to 50 gallons per minute during high tide events. So that's to give you a little bit of perspective. Midcoast Solid Waste is about 30 gallons.
We're up to about 50, but yeah.
So anyway, that is a lot of seawater. It's seawater because it's tidal for the most part. I'm not saying that when it's low tide or any other time there isn't still water coming into the system, but a lot of that is seawater. So that was a huge find, and that was really close to the pump station. So kind of like the beginning of Bayview Street. So I think that as we go down, we'll find a lot more, and a lot of it is it's all coming from the laterals that connect into the sewer main, not even from our own pipe. So we have
Well,
and no, I'm
No,
onto
no,
our own pipe. So we've got a quote for doing some bypass pumping, because before we can even camera the Bayview Street sewer main, they need to remove all the fat, oil, and grease from the line because it gets so clogged up so quickly and easily, and also jet it to remove the grit so that we can camera the line to figure out what the condition of that is. And that'll give us just a better idea of what our options are for repair and or replacement. That is a incredibly deep sewer main. And it's like that so everybody there can gravity feed into it. So I think that moving forward, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out it's in terrible condition and should be replaced. I don't know if replacing it as is will be the best solution, given the expense and the issues that we're experiencing on Bayview Street, both now and projected into the future. So that's going to be a really, I think, important thing for us all to understand and know what our options are moving forward. And it's all bundled into the resilience planning that we're doing, that specifically will look at Bayview Street as well.
Right.
With the fat and grease, I know we had mentioned that a little bit during our workshop, and something came up about whether there were requirements for the restaurants or certain types of businesses to have their own grease trap. Is that the right word? And I'm not sure that we ever really settled that, whether.
So I did
happening.
a little bit of, research into this, or, speaking with a code enforcement officer and trying to get a better idea of does every restaurant have a grease trap? No, they do not. There are some that have never had one, and they've always just sort of washed it down the sink, and it's a big contributor to this getting clogged up. So I think, at some point, and it was when I first got here, so I don't really remember exactly what was in it. So it was like 2017 or 18. We did amend the chapter of the code, the wastewater chapter of the code, to address fat, oil, and grease. Right. I don't know how, anything about businesses that didn't have a grease trap and whether or not they were required to install them if they didn't have them already. In terms of inspection program, it's not something that's regularly checked or inspected. So, if somebody isn't cleaning theirs out regularly, and it's basically not serviceable because it hasn't been maintained, that's not something that we'd find until there's a problem. So I do
That could be
know,
a Vittler license thing when we do,
yes,
we ask them if they're a citizen of the United, all these ridiculous things that
yes.
we probably don't need to ask, but
Yeah, we talked about that as part of like the,
lodging license. or
annual
Vittler
renewal, you
license
have
or-
to, like, we have to see a log saying that you've cleaned your grease trap, or we need to have some sort of evidence that you have one, because it's, cumulatively, it's become a big problem at the Bayview Street pump station. And so, okay, we also did some camera work on, quite a bit of camera work on C Street. There were obstructions that were found in the main there, but not a great deal of I&I or obvious sources of I&I. So that's, I guess, good news on one street. Maine Water has informed us that they're planning to replace the water main on Atlantic Avenue. Just if everybody remembers, there was a break in that particular water main, and it caused, all the way to Pearl Street, people were opening up their taps, and there was some unusual colored water coming out of it. So it's a very old main. It needs to be replaced. They're planning on replacing that water main all the way out into Route 1 and repaving the entire road because
Wow. When?
everybody knows. So they're putting it out to bid next week so that they can have the project completed by July 1st. So it's a pretty aggressive schedule
Yeah,
Wow.
in the middle of summer.
in the middle of summer. So
Who's gonna let the library know? Maine Water should let the library know.
I have a feeling we'll be telling them about that.
Yeah. We should communicate that.
Include that in my next.
So Randy wanted me to give a little bit of an update. So Officer Duke has successfully completed 5 weeks at the academy. She was drafted to assist with the nationals over the weekend as well. So she was, even though she was, I have a full schedule at the academy, she also went to Toboggan Nationals last weekend and helped out there. We're also very happy to report that Officer Brooke Hartshorn will be returning to the Camden Police Department full-time on February 22nd.
Wow.
She's going to fill a vacancy created when Officer Redinger resigned. So Brooke left the department last spring after over 20 years of service with the town to explore other options. But she's come back home, and we're happy to have her.
It's awesome.
And
Welcome
she-
back.
Yeah, so very happy to have Brooke back.
Yep.
And she's going to be doing, she likes doing the shifts that are typically more difficult to fill, which are some of the later shifts. So happy to see Brooke, and everybody say hi to her and welcome back when you see her.
Wow.
She's returned home.
Skateboarders will be mad.
Skateboarders will be mad. Other people will be very, very happy.
She's free. She makes friends with everybody.
She
has to, yeah.
And the Camden Rockport Police Department received an additional $7,500 in grant funding from the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. So the Mid-Coast Council of Governments received a fairly large grant for their whole service territory through the, it was the first round of the congressionally designated spending. And it covers police departments all the way from Brunswick to us. We're the furthest north in their service territory. And they're trying to divide up these funds as equal as they can throughout all of the different agencies in their catchment area. So that's great to see that money is still flowing to departments and that we're a beneficiary of it. And those are my updates.
What, can I ask, what did we end up doing about the snowball and the snowcat thing?
So
400, 600?
So it's a
buy?
400 piston bully was the cheapest option.
Are we going with a rental? Are we going with a, you know, yet?
It looks like it's going to be a lease, and the rentals were only on older equipment, and it was really just to help us out from what I understand. And there isn't a lot of, it's not something that they would normally do for us, but for us being in a bit of a bind.
Right.
What's the difference between a lease and a rental?
So a lease is it's lease purchase agreement. So at the end of it, we'll own the piece of equipment. With the rental, we would just be using it for the season, and then they would take it back.
But I thought didn't we say, like, they're not going to buy something, sign something?
We don't
Right
really
now.
have a choice because the only reason they were apparently going to do the rental for us was to help us out of a bind.
So I don't think we walked away from that last meeting though with feeling like we were going to commit to buying something. Sounds like maybe we need more information for another meeting. I won't put you on the spot
Yeah.
here. Just-
Yeah,
It just sounds a
definitely.
little different from what we,
I agree. I thought that the last meeting, we asked that we explore just a rental for this year and then come back to us to go move forward.
Right, and I think
With the-
that, yeah, I'll
Right, like
come back
multiple
to you with more
machines and-
information. I think that's just easier that way.
Definitely.
We do have a rental to end the season, which was the mandate.
We
gave them.
can, yeah, I mean, I guess what we needed to have some direction because we had like a week to make a decision before we had nothing and couldn't
yeah,
groom the
I-
mountain, so.
Oh,
I felt like
absolutely.
we gave that direction and they said they had enough information. And
Yeah.
But Rochelle
Rochelle,
said she would come back to us with numbers on the difference between lease
Right.
and purchase agreement, things like that. So that's the next step we're waiting for. But we
Right.
gave them the okay. to
Right, that's
rent.
what I thought. It just sounded like Audra said something a little bit different, but I
Yeah,
may have misunderstood.
I agree.
is a little bit,
Did you sign the lease to own?
nothing has been signed yet.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any word in the ones that were brought down for maintenance?
No, we don't know how much the 400 is going to cost to repair.
Okay. All right. All right, without any ado, we'll move on to the consent agenda. It looks like we have somebody here that might want to speak to something on that.
Yeah, we don't, I don't know why they keep putting that as a consent agenda. And by they, I don't, I guess I mean you. They.
Good evening. I'm Sandy Cox. I'm a resident of Camden. And I'm here this evening to ask permission to hold the annual Duck Derby event in May 26th. It would be an afternoon start and we would set up the racetrack early on Sunday and tear it down that day. We'd be done probably by 6 o'clock. And we had also asked permission that we could get the pond emptied for the following day for cleanup like we've done in the past. You've been very helpful in doing that. And then out in front in the islands and the rocks, cleaning that up for just making sure we've picked up everything. I think there were 18 and 19 ducks lost last year.
I don't know. And it has been like a dwindling group that is Peter still involved or did he?
Peter is
officially-
involved the day of the event.
So he's like a real trooper. But maybe we can, it is a great opportunity to get all, not just the ducks, but like the other
Everything,
trash
yep.
too. Because a lot do get lost, like a lot. And then even when we think we get every one of them, we
Once the
still,
water dies down, we can get out there the next morning and really get into the rocks because they bury
yeah.
themselves pretty good. But emptying the pond will really help get the miscellaneous debris out that
Right, that's really the only
always
way.
there.
Yeah.
And so are you, so we have a fee now to empty so are you asking to waive the fee? Is
Oh.
that the ask? I'm asking, we set up a fee.
We've never had a fee to my
Oh, no,
knowledge.
it's new this year.
So
We instituted a fee to empty the impoundment.
I'm hearing about this for the first time, so.
So I'm asking, are you asking us to
I
waive the fee?
would love to, I'm asking you to waive the fee.
So,
So hold on just a
This
second.
is a little
So
different.
yep,
We have the Duck Derby in the consent agenda. What I'm hearing is we need to have, we want
I would
more.
move to remove the Duck Derby from the consent agenda and discuss it
Do I have a
separately.
second?
I second.
All in favor? So moved. Okay. Sandy, we'll get right back to you on that. Do I have anybody here that wants to just quickly talk about the renewal victular license on, I think you're also.
Let's all just take a deep breath and a Vitler license. Really? I thought it was just liquor. Oh, look at that. How's
The
your grease trap?
victualler and
Eric
lodging
Anderson,
license.
this is on right now. Okay, Eric Anderson, General Manager for Bayview Collection, but here and present for the agenda item for victualler's license, lodging license, and I believe I'll be under the public hearing here shortly for
Correct. We'll just do the first.
for
two.
alcohol. Yeah, because the town has now combined them all for one day, which is wonderful, which is nice. So yeah, just here and present. I think everybody who has one of these in renewal should be in front of you just to say hi. But to speak to you, August would be when our grease trap is probably last cleaned out. I mean, you can't quote me 100%, but I'm pretty certain that that's where 16 Babies was last year. We're an annual basis. We're not flying fried food out of our facility at all. Like an annual basis is really all that building needs. But would be happy to, if that becomes a proof of the pudding for future. That's an easy dig for a document for you. But
Okay.
yeah, that's all I have.
We'll get back to you. Do I have anybody that wants to say anything about the consent agenda? I will consider it passed. All right, now we'll bring back up the duck derby. So, sounds like what is in the packet is the day of the derby
Yep.
and the draining of the pond to be able to clean it up. We did pass a $250 anytime that gate is opened or closed. And that is something that can be removed at the select board's request. It's not part of your paperwork, but that's because it is very new. I think it's 2 weeks old.
Well, and we don't have to. I think most of the ducks go past the dam. So we are asking the pond to be dumped as a favor to help clean up some of the debris on an ongoing basis. So it's really not necessary for the ducks. It's really something Allison started and it's worked out very well.
Okay, quickly, Allison, will.
Well, no, but this is an
Yep.
essential part of it that many people over the years express concerns about the ducks that escape and that people clean up all over the place. And it seems like, why are we intentionally dumping 3,000 plastic ducks into the harbor and then just like watching them wash up for the next year? So we came up with sort of a compromise that we would use the ducks as an opportunity to become like extra aware of not just the ducks, but all of the stuff that gets left, all of the trash that's there. So we do this cleanup every year. And so it wasn't like, it's not West Bay Rotary really saying we want to empty the pond just because we need that for our thing. It's, I think it's been a sort of a fun community event to try to get all the trash. And they raise a bunch of money for great community causes. There is a little bit of
anybody
stray
else?
plastic that has to be dealt with. And
Does anybody else have anything?
I mean, I'm not opposed to having a cleanup day, but I think it needs to be spelled out clearly that the town is waiving the fee for this if we're not going to use it. On the other hand, also, Sandy, multiple times we've asked you to look into other options than plastic ducks, either
right.
Biodegradable ducks made of salt or light show or something different so that we wouldn't actually have to do any of those things. And you've never come back to us with any proposals. And this is my third year on the board. And I can guarantee it's the third time I ask. So I would really love to see some efforts to not put any plastic ducks in the river at all.
I think Peter looked at it like 3 years ago, and the biodegradable ones were like 4 times the cost or some ridiculous number. So I think it would be something we would look at, but let's see if we can get these to the end of their life. And I would say another year or two and they're done. So we're going to have to make a decision to do something within a couple of years.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I
And
hope
I
hope that
can
this
get you
decision-
some information
love to.
about options,
Would love to.
and I'll give it to Steph. You can bring it back, okay?
Perfect.
All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. All
Yeah, I
right.
mean, working together on another type of fundraiser for the future, I think is a great
I'd love to.
goal to have, because I agree that, I mean, the ducks, they really do, they break apart, we need a few more volunteers maybe to stay around for the cleanup.
We talked about trying to figure out if we could use the toboggan chute. And how would we do that? And
It would be fun.
be able to, we'd have to do it in stages, maybe 50 or 100 at a time. And use maybe golf balls instead of ducks.
No, you could
So
do
there's
frozen
some
ducks.
options there, or Washington Street with golf balls instead of ducks. So
Bring back the
there
soapbox
has been
derby.
some discussion on, getting out of the duck business and doing the same but different.
Nice.
So that is an option.
I would love to see frozen ducks going down the
Oh,
toboggan
really?
chute. That would be very cool, because then, fine.
No.
Sandy, I know that there's been actually a lot of effort that has been put into this in years past, and these discussions that have gone on behind closed doors. So I do appreciate your
You're welcome.
efforts to bring it forward. It's a great town tradition that I think a lot of people enjoy. And having the foresight to have other options and think outside the box is really great.
I think another option will be coming up to try to alleviate the issue. So just where and what is it can we do?
Yeah.
So I don't know yet. Maybe we take over High Street and run 3,000 golf balls down High Street. We can stop
think
traffic
you
in
should
Lincolnville and
Stick
that-
to the planning board
I
and
know.
go for it.
Last year, 2 years ago, you did the reward thing. I thought that was really awesome, where for a certain amount of time, if people brought ducks after the fact, they brought them to the Chamber of Commerce, and there was a $5 ice cream gift certificate reward. That was really,
we may do
Smart.
that again. We have our first meeting coming up next week on the Duck Derby, so that could be a topic of discussion.
thank
Chris?
you.
Yeah, how do the businesses feel that are there about draining the pond? Isn't that Memorial Weekend as well?
It just, usually, I think we drain it Sunday night, and by noontime, it's filling up again, I think. It's just, we do it basically in the morning on Monday morning.
The Duck Derby itself brings in a bunch of people. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole area is completely packed, and the
Yeah.
businesses definitely benefit. Surprisingly enough, I've gotten a lot of thank yous from some of the businesses saying that because not a lot of people offer to go down and like clean out it's other stuff besides the ducks that gets down there too. And so I've had, several people say sincerely, thank you. I'm sure that the viewpoints are
Yeah.
mixed. They like to be told ahead of time.
Mhm. Yep.
You should come and check it out. See our
Yeah, it's fun. All right,
All right.
do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the 2024 West Bay Rotary Duck Derby for Sunday, May 26th, and that we waive the gate opening and closing fee for the Montgomery Dam in order to facilitate cleanup efforts.
Do I have a second? No second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I'm not sure about that one, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Passes 4-0. Thank you, Sandy. All right, we'll move on to public hearings for liquor licenses. We will, I'll open the floor to anybody that is here to represent any of the businesses. The first one we will deal with is the application of Franny's Bistro at 55 Chestnut Street for a renewal Class 1 restaurant liquor license to serve malt liquor, wine, and spirits on premises. I don't see anybody here, so I will move to the board. Any comments, discussion?
I move that we approve Franny's application for liquor license, just because I really appreciate that Jennifer's title is Queen. She put it in there to make sure we read it. So
Do I have a
That's the
second?
only reason you're approving it.
No, I do think she's the queen of Franny's Bistro too, but I think it was very cute. So I make a motion that we approve.
It's a little hard one to second, but I second.
Why wouldn't you second?
Oh, just because I think the reasoning, I have different reasons for approving, but, you know.
Do I have any discussion? All those in favor? So moved. Moving on to deal with the application of Bayview Street in DBA 16 Bayview for renewal of the Class 1 hotel liquor license to serve malt liquor, wine, and spirits on premises.
Eric Anderson, General Manager, 16 Bayview, or DBA Bayview Street.
It's a mouthful.
Here and present, operating. Any questions? No?
No, I moved that we approve the application for liquor license for 16 Bayview.
Second,
Any discussion?
Thank you for showing
thanks
up,
for,
Bill.
yeah,
Thanks,
All
Select
thanks for
Board.
being here.
Madam Chairman, thank you.
Right, we do appreciate
So
that.
moved. All right, we will move right along to approval of the action items. Approval of entertainment district, common consumption area for Barron's Restaurant at 2 Wayfarer Drive and Salt Wharf at 3 Wayfarer Drive. Do I have anybody here that wants to discuss?
Josh, you're here for that?
I'm here.
Well, he's
Joshua
here for
Moore,
us.
representing Lyman Morse, just here in case you have questions. I don't have anything to present per se. I think everything's in the packet there, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
So just to give you all a little bit of background, if you don't remember, this is a new type of liquor license that the state allows, or not the liquor license, but instead of just having a licensed area that can be used by one licensee, you can create an entertainment district and multiple licensees can serve within that area. So it's a new thing that sort of came out of the pandemic, and the legislation is really poorly drafted and they don't understand municipalities, but we hung in there and went through the process, and voters approved our ability to create these entertainment districts. So this is sort of the last step in the
So
process.
We approved one for Lyman, correct?
So
Yeah.
both the businesses that will be operating from this entertainment district, so it's the
Also.
restaurant, Salt Wharf and Blue Baron,
Okay.
they have their individual liquor licenses, and then we have an entertainment district over that property that allows them to serve within the same area, so that Lyman Morse doesn't need to cordon off two separate
Okay,
license areas.
okay.
They
we
can,
So
they can
that's-
kind of like flow into each
That's
other.
the distinction, is that Lyman does hold it. Each individual place that wants to serve alcohol would then also have to come.
No, I believe
under-
that both of the restaurants have their own liquor licenses, and the entertainment district is over the property, and they can both serve within the entertainment district.
Yeah, the entertainment district exists now that the voters passed that. This will actually, if you approve it, it will go to the state and become an amendment to Salt Wharf's liquor license and Blue Baron's liquor license.
liquor
It's an
license, I
amendment to there that says they obviously have their liquor license for their premises,
Yeah.
but then it says you can use
Okay.
this common consumption area, which is just the wharf sort of in front of them. This will be, if it is approved, this will be the first one in the state of Maine that's ever been done.
No, I think that was a great.
Yep.
I was just a little confused as to why we needed to do it, since we already gave Lyman, but it has to do with
Bad
their license.
legislation.
Their licensing, that, needs to be, all right.
What did the legislation allow them to do that they couldn't do before?
So-
Share space?
Yes, share space. So before everybody's with their individual liquor license, it applies to a very specific designated area that needs to be
Okay, so these,
cordoned
now the
off.
people can intermingle in the
Right,
same.
Right,
Yeah.
now
Makes
they can
total sense,
remove
but-
their robes and let people.
Wow.
Yes.
It doesn't allow them to make noise and stuff too, and
All
We
the
have
normal,
ordinances about
the
that.
only
Well, I want
change
them
is
to be able to
that
make
you
noise,
have
I'm
like a,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
not
sure that
exempt them. It'd be
I'm
nice
sure
if
they
could-
will by virtue of the fact that there's more togetherness.
Yeah.
Does that, but they still have to, special amusement permits and the entertainment stuff, that doesn't get them around the.
No, all
All of
of
this
that
is
is still the
included.
same.
I wish it
Oh, really? I thought it
could
was
get them
included.
around the noise
No,
ordinance?
because they still have to have their individual liquor license and entertainment licenses.
I'm asking if it gets them around, if that is a vehicle for us to also, maybe in the future, or does it have anything about noise, or is it completely, why is it called entertainment
It's
then?
just, this is just the state liquor
Right.
licensing process.
For area.
But the entertainment district just is about consuming alcohol. It doesn't actually, that's the entertainment. It doesn't talk about noise or anything.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think it's great when there is noise outside and concerts and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's not part of this though, but thanks for doing what you do.
Do I hear a motion?
I would move that we approve the amendment to the entertainment district. Is it an extension of
The approval of entertainment district.
approval of, I would move that we approve the entertainment district and common consumption area for Barron's Restaurant at 2 Wayfair Drive and Salt Wharf at 3 Wayfair Drive.
Perfect.
Sure. I'll second.
Great. Any opposed? I mean, all approve? Does anybody approve? All right, we are approved 4-0. Thank you. All right, we will now move on to the approval of the assembly permit for the Camden Classic Cups on July 25th through 27th, and the approval of temporary signs of the downtown lamp post. Does anybody here want to present on that?
I think it's great that they do it, and thank you. And
It's pretty, it's pretty darn.
and the
clear.
assembly permit is because more than 400 people could be amassing.
Yes.
It seems just kind of almost crazy that we have to approve some of this stuff, but I think it's great that you're doing it, and I'm very much in favor.
Yep,
And I move that we approve it.
I second.
Anybody want to discuss? All those in approve? Passes 4-0. Now we
We're
will-
really making it worth your while, Josh.
We will look at the request from Steward Education Alliance, SEA. She used the same space as last year on the public landing for their SEA park. And I see we have somebody that wants to discuss with us.
That would be me. I'm Wayne Rustwick. I am a resident of the town of Camden, and I am a board member of the SCA. I would propose that we are able to do essentially what we did last year with a couple changes. I'm going to improve the water holding capability of the tanks so that we're not going to have leaks this year, which would be preferable. We'd also like to add additional signage so that we can be more informative of what's actually in the tank, what's in the harbor, what's flying above the harbor. And at some point, we would eventually love to tie into the whole perimeter of the harbor with informational signage that will be talking about invasive species, what's native plants, what's not supposed to be there, what is supposed to be there, what's salinity, what's just
Sea level rise.
sea level rise, what's a high tide, what's a king tide. And basically, we'd love at some point to build somewhat of a trail so that parents could bring kids or grandkids along it and learn about an area. And we've also talked to the Coastal Mountain Land Trust about possibly doing the same thing on their properties so that you can learn about the harbor, you can learn about the river, you could learn about an upland bog. And it could be something eventually it's tied into a program where you could get a badge or a hat or a t-shirt if you visited 3 of the 8 areas or something. Just, we want to teach the kids in the area about where they live, how it interacts, and why they should care about protecting it, so that when we have problems, we know why we're having problems and we figure out how to make them resilient, or we change how we plant things and care for our watersheds. Do you guys have any questions about, I know most of you were down there this summer. I saw you down at the harbor in some various states of distress. But did you have questions on what we did or what we didn't do, or what you'd like us to do or not do in the future?
Is there any way that the tank could be moved so it's perpendicular to the way that it is today, so that it doesn't block the view of the harbor?
We could look at laying that out. I mean, where it was placed last year gave the best viewing from the park, as opposed to being on one end of it or the other.
My personal preference is that it would be perpendicular, at least so that it wouldn't block the view as people are coming from the parking lot to the harbor, which is what most people are doing. And the signage that you're proposing, will that also, where would you propose doing additional signs? Below the level of the tank or at the same level of the tank?
It probably would be at a similar level. Some of it might be on the side of the harbor master's office. There might be some signs we have planters for both trees and pollinator plants that are part of the park. So it may be that we would have signage on the front of some of those. We want to talk more about what pollinator plants are, why they're important, and what species they attract. And, also adjacent to the tank, we'd want to be listing what's in there. And that's something that probably would be movable plates, so that we could say, oh, Pogi's in the harbor right now. We get Pogi and put him in there, or the herring are running. So people could see actively what's happening in our harbor.
And I guess, is there anything that needs to be done as well so that it's more resilient in a high tide event? What happened to it this year?
Well, I'm pretty confident that two things need to change. Whenever that tank is full, I have no doubt it's not going to move. There's 2,800 pounds of water or something in that tank. And if that high tide event had happened when that tank was full, I'm pretty confident it would have stayed put. It would have lifted all our planters up and moved them away. But what has to happen is at the end of the season, we just pick it up, disconnect it, and we place it in behind the restrooms there, which is what Dave St. Laurent did the second storm came around. The good news, you can see it's a very movable park. So it's not a permanent installation, and we can move it around and make changes to it.
How did it go as far as keeping it clean? Did you have plenty of volunteers this summer keeping it
We
clean?
had people from our board who did most of that. One of the changes that we are hoping to institute this year is to have an intern from the high school that would work with us, and they would be responsible for maintenance of keeping the tank clean, making sure that the critters are in good shape, and also that our plantings are kept watered and weeded or whatever needs to be done.
So last year I opposed this project because we didn't have a public policy for the landing. This year we still don't have a public policy for the landing, and you're coming back to us with like multiple additions that are not anywhere near a public policy for the landing. So I'm really concerned that we're really not dealing with a public landing in a very coherent way. I understand your educational purpose. I understand the tank. I understand all those things, but I cannot support another project that is designed outside of a public policy for the landing, especially since we got a grant and we're going to do the redesign for the landing.
We're not using the
I
grant
know.
for that anymore.
I know.
Yeah.
And so we're back to square zero, not even one. And we're not having this discussion about having a rational approach to how we're going to use the public landing. So I mean, I understand, again, I understand all those things, super interesting, sea level rise, pollinators, critters, all of those are good things. But we're doing this outside of any planned approach and any policy on how to use the public landing. And are we, once again, we're going to have businesses who are going to come and say, you still don't have a policy, but you let the tank. So I'm torn because I do want to support education, but I just don't like being put in this position. And it's not you, you're not putting us in this position. We're putting ourselves in this position that we don't have an actual policy for the public lending.
And I'm sure there would be a lot of discussion on that. I do feel, just from an anecdotal point of view, most of the businesses in the area that I talked to were pleased with it.
Good.
It added to their experience of the people riding on the windjammers, people that were getting a sandwich at Harbor Dogs. It did provide space at the harbor for additional seating and places to sit down and rest and enjoy. I understand your concerns about, what is it supposed to be there or not, and what else should be or couldn't be, or et cetera. But in this case, and it is a yearly thing at this point, but we haven't had massive feedback that we're a problem at the
Oh,
harbor.
no, I know.
So,
Allison?
I mean, one of the letters of support that we received was from the Chamber of Commerce, which
They never speak on
I
it.
found to be like, oh, wow. And, because a lot of the time people come here and they're looking for things to do. They're looking for things to learn about. I spend a lot of time down there at the public landing and get exhausted sometimes just trying to explain to people what they're seeing. And there's a huge appetite for learning more because it's this really special place that people are curious about. And I think that I saw a lot of people able to enjoy that area in a way that they never could before, when it was just a couple of parking spots. So there were, kids looking at the tank and adults having a moment that they could sit down and catch their breath. I think initially they had this idea of just trying to put a tank there and, squeeze that in with everything else. And I think what they have provided is like a really huge benefit to the town in a way that just a tank and an information board wouldn't have been, because a lot of people who don't even care about the educational message or the tank or anything, they're sitting there enjoying the bench planters that are there. It's a place to eat your hot dog. It's a place to be able to sit. And so I didn't really hear you saying that this year, we're expanding some massive expansion of it, more just kind of ideas for the future, that for this year, we're looking at, I don't think he's really asking us for an expansion this year. He's asking us to
He's
be able
asking
to.
for expansion.
yeah, I mean,
Is
well,
that
the footprint would remain the same as we had last year. And within that footprint, we would add additional signage so that we're giving more information within the same space.
Which is one of the things that, one of the letters that we got actually said, it would be nice if they could have more signage. And so I think, one of the things in terms of how they took care of it, I was actually really impressed. Those trees, for instance, one of the things that was said was that the trees that are there, they were going to be used as part of our street tree planting program. And I know some on the Conservation Commission were skeptical that the trees were going to be cared for well enough to be able to be planted. And sure enough, all of those trees that were there are now planted in somebody's yard as part of the town right of way, as part of our planting program. So the building of picnic tables, the involving of lots of different people has provided this place that the community can enjoy. And I would also say that there has been a significant amount of community planning that has gone on in the past around the public landing, and all of it asked to incorporate more public spaces, more green spaces. Every possibility for the public landing includes taking away some parking and replacing that with a public area. And what this is allowing us to do is actually kind of experiment with some of that a little bit to see, okay, what do people like? What do people not like? So it's, in addition to all the other benefits, it's consistent with our voter-approved downtown master plan, which can't be said about a lot of things. So I think it's really been a wonderful thing, and that we should be very grateful for the carpentry and design and the service it's provided. My only personal thing is I would like to see the water fountain, and this is like a town, maybe Steve Pixley lobbying thing, but there's that little, very difficult to find place where the public can get some water. And I have so many people ask me for like a water refilling station down there. And it feels like we could just somehow make what's already there a little more visible, and that could work really well into the overall message of the park, that, you know, the conservation mindedness and all of that.
So
So
maybe one of our signs can include an arrow with
yeah, so
someone drinking
water, just to say, because
Okay.
I lived here my whole life and never knew. Apparently, some people have known that that's been there for 20 years. Did you know that? The little, see, I didn't. And I'm not alone in not knowing that. So just direct people to the water. That would be, that make me
And there's
happy.
usually a dog watering bowl there.
That I
as
had
well.
seen many times before, but yeah, I didn't realize.
So I know last year when we first set that all up, it was very congested in there. And I'm thinking that at some point, somebody must have said something and it was quickly revised to have a little bit more walking space instead of having, it just seemed very jammed with the bench and the park, the picnic tables and things like that. So it's after a little bit of time, I'm not even going to say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that was taken care of. And the visualization of it was, to me, it was actually pretty great. The only, and I'm not sure who I emailed about, but the only complaint that I received is the fact that it leaked. And that I can't tell you, I was standing there once and this little toddler went over to go see it and their mother freaked out because they were like, oh, I don't want your feet all sticky getting into my Lexus. So I was like, okay. So, but I actually heard that a lot. So I think that's a great thing that you identified as something that needed to be fixed.
As the builder, I would like to solve the leaking, so. yeah.
So I have also had a lot of people ask me if that's the best spot to have that viewing tank if it's approved, because it has been asked of me many times if underneath the tree over by the bell in that dirt area might be a better place, since we are going to be encouraging younger kids to come down and learn about the area. It would, the foot traffic would be then around more of the perimeter of the harbor. It would encourage people to, you know, use more of the harbor, also providing some shade and resting space in an area that seems to be already set up for something like that.
Yeah, I know that the Garden Club is working on a plan for that park, I believe. Not positive of that. It might be something we could do in the future. Currently, the tank is set up to circulate water directly from the bottom of the harbor. And I've got piping and my pump is way out in the middle of the harbor and it's down at the bottom of the harbor. So it picks up the saltiest, coldest water that we have available in the harbor. If we were to move it to another location, which we could think about in the future, it's going to involve adding a chiller. It's going to add, we'd have to add filtration, and essentially have an independent tank that's no longer connected to the harbor. Just because the distances to pump that much water that far is going to make it very challenging.
That's what I wanted at first too. I was really pushing that.
Yeah.
It's the part of the salt water is part of it too. There's too much fresh, even if they were to get a hose over there, the fresh water is known to kill lobsters and.
Yeah, it's
I
very
do think
brackish
it's
up high.
also something for the board to consider, the fact that, you know, we have been waiting for Jeremy to come back with a public use plan to kind of have more of a vision of what we want down there, whether the public landing was going to be revamped or whatever, but what we wanted to have the landing look like. So that is something that should be discussed in this, I would think. If anybody else had any comments.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted it just even not, I think the visioning thing is maybe phase 2 or 3, but just an inventory of every existing agreement that we have down there and, you know, property map with, you know, all of the little things that come to us from time to time. So we know just all the other agreements that we already have, so we can look at them all at once at some point. And then, yes, definitely in the future, a vision for how that should
Right.
be and how we, how we allocate those spaces
Yeah.
fairly, whether it's always just the same use as has been there, or at some point we say, okay, these are the 3 spots that are going to be part of a competitive opportunity. These are the spots that are, long-term agreements or whatever. The Chamber of Commerce, what is that?
Right.
There's a bunch of them down there. And when we don't do it all together, I agree, it does diminish the quality of our decision-making because we've already ended up committing.
Right.
But I see this as a little different.
When do you need a decision by to get it up and running when you want to? For the
Well, one of the issues that is tied in here, there's not only time to get the tank repaired, get it up and running, get it replumbed and wired, and get the tank, all the plantings and in. But part of this is to allow us to start into our grant cycles. We've got a number of applications which we're holding right now because they are relating directly to this harbor or project, so that if there's going to be additional plantings we need to buy, if there's money for an intern to come down and work at the park, improvements again this year.
So we wouldn't be able to have not that you need a $10,000 artist drawing of what you plan to do, but it would be nice to know more of the details of what you would really like to do with your signage and whatnot prior to giving a approval today.
Audra, what would
That's
you?
why I wonder what's your
Yeah.
time frame, and thinking about Sophie's other question about the other public uses and that will get requested.
I mean, are we really thinking about telling them, no, you can't do this because we want to put this out to the only realistic thing that could happen there for this season, if we say no to them, is allow people to park there again. I mean, we've received more public input on this than we do on a lot of things. I just can't imagine holding this hostage when so many people have worked on it.
Okay. Audra, signage.
Yes.
How would that work down there? Because I can't imagine would let people just throw signages up all over town property without having some sort of direction.
Yeah,
So
we have
how
a
would
chapter
that-
and a code on signage, and we would make sure that they followed that.
They're just talking about putting some more labels and things on the tank to say this is what's in there. And
I think
I
what
don't know,
Chris
we
is
don't
just
have that.
saying, though, is that he can't visualize what the signage would look like without knowing what it's going to look like. I know that when we did this last year, we kind of put it out there that, yes, we'll allow you to do it under kind of the surveillance of the harbor master and Audra. And if there was anything that any of the board didn't like or would like to see change, that they would bring it back, and then we could give directions on that manner as well. I would assume you would be open to that sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year in particular was an experiment, and I think ongoing this is an experiment. We don't know long-term what's going to happen with the entire landing. Things are going to get switched up. There's going to be more or less public space. Maybe at some point we can integrate into a different area, whether it's up by the waterfall or, but I would love to think that we could do this again where we did it last year.
And you're hearing the concern with signage isn't the amount of signage maybe per se, but the visualization that it would have on the effect of.
Well, we don't want it to, we're not going to set up neon signs. We're not going to have animated creatures. It'll be simple illustrative, like Audubon style pictures of all the critters so that you can see what it looks like, and then you can look for it in the tank. Or, we've also talked about possibly having a lending library there in the park. So you could take out a book on fish that are in the harbor or birds that fly around the mid-coast Maine area. And maybe there's a couple pair of binoculars there that are chained to the gate so people can look around the harbor with those. But nothing that's going to be garish or gaudy or excessively tall, just informational. Because there's things there. And what we found last year is every time we were visiting, we got a million questions because there wasn't enough information to go with all the things that were right there that needed explanation. It just needed a little more illustration of what they were.
Need a
Right,
QR
I think
code or
that we
something, huh?
have discussed this and I am ready to hear a motion if anybody wanted to make one.
I move that we approve the request from Stewardship Education Alliance to use the same space as last year on the public landing for their and everyone's Sea Park.
Do I have a second?
Can you really take a look at making it perpendicular, or is that not possible?
I will take a look at it. I mean, one of the places that I would have put it would have been far to the right of the harbor as you're looking at the harbor. And we found problem there because people have to open their car doors. So that got eliminated. So,
Really?
there's some limitations on what we can fit in that footprint.
That's too bad.
Maybe, Chris, you could just
So
like go down
I
there
have
with
a
them and-
motion and I actually need a second before we can move on to more discussion.
Oh, good point.
Well, it's second for the purpose of discussion.
Thank you. Okay.
Doesn't cost anything.
Just keeping it on order here.
Gotta have
Thank you.
law and order.
Is there any more discussion that needs to be had?
Well,
He's pretty collaborative. I mean, I didn't ask if I could give input, but I went down there and I said, I didn't like that color and this and that. And so other people were like, I do like this color. I'm willing to guess that you could meet Wayne down there. And sometimes when you actually visualize something, it's like, oh, okay, I can see why they did this or that. I was upset that something about the bike rack at the beginning, and then I was okay with it. So, I mean, it feels like maybe just go down there and.
Wayne and
check it
I mean,
out,
there's a
right?
lot fit into a very small
Right.
area. It has to have walkways. It has to be safe for people that are walking through the park. It does need to provide for the bikes to be able to access both sides of the rack. There's a lot going on in a couple parking spaces there. So.
Do we need to be ADA compliant as well?
So before there were cars completely blocking
Oh,
people
I know
getting
that-
through. So I think that is something that should be, there was like one spot where a wheelchair could get all the way through, I think, and I think you should keep.
Later in the summer, there was
Yeah.
more space. I don't know. Did you remove a picnic table? or
Well,
something?
the thing
Something
that
was
happened
removed.
initially, the kids at the hatchery had built, I think, 5 picnic tables, and they were all excited, and they brought them down and they put them all in the park, and
Right.
you couldn't walk in the park.
It was
Um,
like, wow.
And
They looked great. The picnic tables were very
they were great, and they were recycled from the boardwalk, which is a nice use of that, and tied into the hatchery, which is great. And Dave St. Laurent came down and we did hot dogs and hamburgers and celebrated the kids, which was great. And then I immediately talked to Dave about finding some other homes for those. So, I mean, if it turns out that we have too much in there, I mean, it's always a balancing act. You want enough space and usability, but obviously it should be ADA compliant.
Yeah.
I want to at least make sure that there's a path to be able to get in front of the tank,
Right.
certainly. So
If you do another celebration of that, you should just send us an email just in case we're available to come down and
I didn't
be
do
champions.
well.
as
That was a Dave St. Laurent thing. He's the grill master, so I'll let him know that you should be on the list, though.
No, you guys send out the invitations. Our town staff can't be, we can't be sending, we can't even send out a newsletter.
All right, I think I'm going to
Anyway,
take a
that's
vote
my
now.
only thing. Wayne and I have talked before. We've been down there before together, and to me, it's yes, there were cars there before, and it's better than cars, sure. But if it could have been perpendicular, then you get best of both worlds. You still get people to be able, as long as you're able to walk around the back of that safely. I don't know what's on the back of it,
Well, I might have to bring the
to be-
piping in a different way and reconfigure the plumbing a little bit to make that work if we do it perpendicular.
And we still get the seating, but yeah. Yeah, it is good to have other things to look at. I agree with Sophie, though, too, that we do need to, as we'll get more requests coming on overall public and private use of the of that space. But
Is that something that's part of what Jeremy's working on for the master plan for down there?
No.
Getting input and
We asked
feedback and,
Jeremy to bring us in public land use rules, guidelines, sort of things. that
And I-
other-
I-
For not
guess
just
to-
that area, but.
to-
for
so it's
other
not
update you
really
on
fleshed
that.
out
It's-
at all yet.
It's like
just-
that's a big project, and it would have been less of a big project if we were doing it as part of like the redesign of the landing. Now is sort of like a standalone thing on its own. It's still really, it's just a lot of work is all I'm saying.
So would it be better if we had a half-hour discussion ourselves, just to kind of say, do we
Yeah.
want it to happen down on the landing? How many spaces if we wanted to have?
I do think having, like, if this is really the way you want to go, we did do research to try and find, is there anything comparable that we could
Right.
use as a starting point? There's
Yes.
just not.
Right.
There's not. So
Rockland's completely different.
completely.
Belfast is completely
Completely
different.
So, and a lot of them, there's no like comprehensive policy for anyone's landings. It's like, this is what we're doing with all of it. So I think if this is the direction you all want to go in, we need some parameters to get us kind of started on this.
Let's just start with knowing what's there now, like aerial imagery.
Again,
with
that's
arrows.
that's a big project too.
I'll do it. I mean, I'll do it. This is the Chamber of Commerce. They have a lease until blah, blah, blah. This is.
Yeah. Again, but I mean, like those revocable agreements that are
know.
just hanging around that.
That nobody even, can we mark the boundaries? Let's start, how about we mark the boundaries of the public landing? And
We do have that. We have a
let's
boundary
start with
survey.
like what we can do.
Right.
We have that.
I
I
do
didn't know
think
what those
that
were.
having space down there for people that come and ask us to set up.
Right.
I think that is something we need to tackle. I
Yeah.
understand that you want it to be a bigger project with.
That's
with-
actually quite like the simplest, if I could think of like one component of this that is probably the most simple part to tackle, it would be if you want vendors, like how many,
Right.
how big a space you want them, where do you want
Right.
them? That's all something that's pretty
Right,
modest. The problem is like you don't get that sort of comprehensive, like
right.
Allison and Sophie were
I'm not
talking.
asking for comprehensive. I'm asking for, I don't think that's even remotely possible. I think it is possible for us to know what is currently there. Just
So what? So what? It
Existing
doesn't-
agreements on the public landing.
But so what?
Then we know before we give out new opportunities, it's nice to know when Courtney comes with the popcorn, then to know that we already have this agreement with the restaurant that allows them to use the patio area for this amount of money. We have this agreement with the Chamber of Commerce and they're restricted to this area. We have this agreement with the Montgomerys that allows them to use these 7 parking spaces. And then we can more fairly allocate. If we want to have a place that's like where people can apply to be, then we know what places are up for.
Well,
Grab, we have to
basically,
decide
You
is-
say you can more fairly allocate what people ask. Fairness has nothing to do. You need to have criteria.
I
You
want
need
to
to-
do all
you
that,
need
but
to
we
have a-
don't even know what's there now.
You need to have a policy. I mean,
I agree, but we don't
having
even
having
know.
us chase around what kind of revocable agreements we have on the public landing is only part of the equation. So what? We're gonna have an inventory. It's gonna take us 6 months to do this.
We have like,
It's
it's not,
And then we still won't have a policy, but we'll know what's there. And we're gonna have the same discussions in a year again.
but if you
I mean,
have a
this is not
policy
moving
with,
forward.
have leases that don't expire for another several years. So it's good to know that before we have a policy that says the Chamber of Commerce is out and we're putting that out to bid for hot dog stands. I don't think we're going to do that. We need to know the existing agreements. I mean, I think.
I don't disagree with you, but I do know that there is space down there that people are coming to us asking to use. With our open space that is available, what kind of policies are we going to put into place to use?
Like
what
parking
kind-
spaces? I mean, I'm all up for coming up with parking spaces that we, Rita.
The parking areas, that the boardwalk, like all of those sort of spaces that are already open and used by the town.
like, why?
Why,
There's no
what
space.
kind of policies are we going to have to use? Do we want the boardwalk to be have fishing people come up and sell their lobsters
Hmm.
out of places there on the boardwalk
Oh, no,
or on the
no.
side of the boardwalk or on one side of the harbor. Do we want to have, jewelry people come in and set up anywhere? I mean,
But that's why we need a policy, Stephanie.
Right.
We have the
That's
benches
why,
and.
that's why we need a policy.
I'm
but-
actually arguing your point,
I know.
Sophie.
But
So
there
I
is
know,
just
but
no
we're not,
space.
we're
I
not
am
gonna move tonight,
completely
so.
agreeing with you on that. So I think a comprehensive look on what we want down there is, I think what I heard the last time, and I'm hearing that again this time, that we need to discuss what kind of policies and what kind of guidelines and rules do we want to put into place? Or
I'd say
do we
the
just do it a
discussion
one-off?
that we need to have with you guys is what kind of outcomes do you want down there? What is your goal down there? What do you want it to look like? Do you want there to be more parking, less parking, more food vendors, less
Right.
food vendors? Like all that kind of stuff is what
Right,
we need as parameters before we can sort of move forward with
right.
writing anything that you could accept as a policy.
Or we could just continue as it is and do it as one-offs and continue, because right now that's what we are tasked with when we are given an application. We are looking at it as one-offs, and it doesn't seem to be a cohesive agreement on that. So, but right now we have the Sea Park on the agenda. I have a motion and I have a second. I'm going to call for a vote. All in approval? All opposed? 3-1 passes.
Very good. And we'll stay in communication and try to keep as many people happy as possible.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Wayne.
Thanks,
And
guys.
you had an endorsement, I'm sure you know, of Vicky Dudera. She sent a letter of endorse. You did, okay. Well, I'll scratch that, take that out of the minutes.
She's a good supporter.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck. We'll move right along to the appointment of the Historical Resource Committee member.
I move that we approve Danny Solomon for the Historic Resources Committee. Also the mastermind behind the picnic tables, but don't hold that against him.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? None opposed, 4-0. We will move on to the update on the paid parking program. Audra, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to apologize too. I wrote a memo and it had background information that I was hoping would be helpful to all of you in this discussion, but I think we had a technical problem getting into the packet because there's a bookmark to it, but it's not there.
Oh, some
So-
things were out of order, so I kept looking all day to see if
Yeah.
it was, but I didn't see anything.
So I'll send you the memo afterwards because it does have, links to, the area on the website where all the information on the project is. It's got links to studies that were done and old documents. So I guess I'll read off the memo just to give you some background on it. So, it was really giving you background on the project itself, give you an update on the recommendations from the project working group and additional work that's underway to invest the implications of these recommendations so that, we can bring the select board, a proposal for a program that you have, comprehensive information on and you understand where it's coming from. You can make some sort of decision on it. So to give you a little bit of background on this, the idea of paid parking in Camden, to return to, I think it was, Allison used the term, a voter-approved downtown master plan from 2012. That master plan very strongly recommends paid parking. And it even went as far to say it recommended a comprehensive parking management study that included paid parking, which was really the work that we hired John Burke to do in, I believe it was 2020 when that project started. And, it's really just sort of an iterative step that's moving forward a lot of work that a lot of people in town have done over the years. Even further back, I think it was in the 80s or the 90s, there was a group that made recommendations on metered parking down at the public landing. And each and every time, and I'll be the first to admit this and say this, even though there is volumes of research and evidence that the best way to manage your parking, particularly in a situation like Camden, is to have it be paid for so that you're able to better match supply with demand, it is very unpopular. People hate paid parking. And so there's been a lot of pushback politically. And we've never gotten to the point as a town where the select board felt comfortable moving forward with paid parking. So I just want that to be the backdrop to this, because I think there's, like anything controversial or unpopular, there's a lot of misinformation about it. But I can tell you, as somebody who, started my career as a land use planner, this is not debatable. It is evidence-based that this is the best way to sort of run a parking system, especially in a, very highly used and highly trafficked downtown area like Camden. We've got all of the warrants that would make paid parking the best solution to manage the problem that we have. And I have been told since day one when I started here that Camden has a big problem with how parking is managed, and we needed to fix it. So I was onto this because it is a very obvious and clear solution to a problem that we can fix and do better with, and not only sort of manage our parking better, but also bring in revenue from it that we can use to fix our infrastructure. So that's sort of the background to it. And I have all kinds of links to source material, not just research that was done in our own parking studies, but from all across the country that support this approach.
Audra?
Yep.
So those links, you'll email them to us.
I'll
and
email you the memo, and you can just click on them and bring them up.
It's on the website too.
Could that be included or try to be put in the minutes? Or do you think that?
We can do both. We can
Okay.
do a link to
Just because I agree with Sophie, a lot of people read the minutes more than watch.
Yes. So yep, absolutely. I can, link everyone to, we have it's I don't think it's on the front page of the website anymore, but it's a news item with all of the
Right.
meetings, all of the reports, all of the,
You just have to scroll down.
You have to
People
scroll.
need to
You
know
have to
that when you get on the website, you have, the pop-ups, scroll down past the calendar and you'll come into the news.
items.
Or search. I usually just go to the search and I just typed in parking.
Yeah.
And it came up with that
Yeah.
option.
right
Or you can just, it's.
So, the last study in this iteration was the study that our consultant, John Burke, finalized in 2022. And the first step that was recommended in implementing this, because everybody knew it's political, it's a difficult thing to sort of, get behind, was doing a pilot project at the public landing. Because the study, it looked at from the 5-way intersection in the downtown, a 1/4-mile radius from there, and that sort of encapsulated everything in that area. And it was recommended that with the exception of a few larger lots that are owned by the town and a few specific streets, pretty much all of Main Street, Elm Street, Bayview, Mechanic Street, and I can read through the whole list of it a little bit more comprehensively, should be paid parking, and the lots within there. The exception would have been the Knox Mill lot and a couple others that are in that, that are sort of in that outer area.
Is that
Public
on?
safety, that was a little different. That was like a paid permit
Right.
for employees.
A
or
little bit
something like that.
longer term.
Yes, a little bit longer
Parking.
term. So, that was kind of the first step in it. And I think another really important point to all of this is that the success of any of these programs is their flexibility. So we get data back, from the kiosks. We collected data with the initial study to try to figure out what is the usage look like in different lots, in different on-street spaces, during different times of the day in the peak of the summer. And then they came back during sort of the low season in November to figure out what does it look like then and what are the differences. And, when you're updating your data and you have more information about how your program's working. Some of the really important reality of the situation. So, this meeting of the sort of project, working group was really to look at, okay, well, we had one season where we did paid parking down at the public landing. How did that program go? Unfortunately, it became difficult to untangle from the fact that we had a new enforcement software at the same time. And so some of the issues with that got commingled with some of the, paid parking specific program issues that we needed to sort out. So, those are some things that I think have gotten really intertwined in people's minds, and rightly so, because they kind of looked at, the difference in enforcement and the enforcement software as being affected by the paid parking program, even though they were different, because the paid parking program was just for the landing. So I guess does anybody have any questions about that before we go into like the specific recommendations that came out of that group, or any of the background information?
I mean, I think at some point we should really go through some of the main findings of the initial study. Like, just some of the things that were surprising to me is the percentage of traffic that they found might be generated by people driving around looking
30%.
for spots.
Right.
Things that I were, just totally off of my radar to even think about. And then the times of day when they found that, there was 95 or 90%, whatever the threshold is that they use for occupancy, because they have ways of measuring, like, what should a town be in terms of, if you want to go through at lunch, how many parking spots should be available in order to have people turning over, and where are we good and where are we not? And I just think some of those we've kind of like not dwelled enough on, just some of those basic findings from the beginning, and we've launched right into, all the details of the fees, or where the kiosk is going to go, or and that at some point it would be good to have just like a fact sheet maybe of.
Well, I'd love for us to do a workshop, and that's sort of one thing I put in the memo, is that we really can't do this justice, I think, without having a workshop to go over a lot of it, because there's just so much research about this from other places, and then so much research we've done on our own, and work people have done on this over the years, and then adding to it like the torrent of data that we get back from actually having meters installed, and decisions that need to be made about the program itself. So it's really, there's a lot going on with it, and we're not going to do justice to all of this tonight. So
Right.
yeah, so I'm just doing.
So you do
high
want a
level.
workshop? I just got through telling Stephanie how I didn't want one.
I
but
definitely
So-
wanted workshop.
We're going to have a larger discussion that dives,
Okay.
that has a deeper dive into this, how that looks. I don't know if I should say this, but we're probably not going to be able to implement more this year.
Correct. So
We
yeah.
have a little bit of leeway. So if we wanted to do a workshop, it doesn't need to be done in March.
Why are we not implementing more this year?
So there's just no way we'll be able to get the equipment installed in time for the season, because there's like a half a year lead time on.
Right. To
Getting
order
equipment.
and get it, and
Yeah.
get it installed.
That's why I saw Rockland just ordered like
And now we
8 of
have
them.
to replace Bayview.
God. No.
But we're not going to go there. So
Yeah.
we are going to have a bigger discussion. Tonight was more just a quick update of kind of how we are, where we're at with the parking group. Lots of people have asked what the recommendations were because of the consultant being brought up a few times. So unless,
I think that article in the Bangor News also, that I think the line even in there said something like Camden is already doing this, and I wasn't
Fully
sure if that was-
implemented. I think
yeah,
they
fully
said fully
implemented.
implemented. I was like, what?
yeah,
Where did they get that information?
So
I
it's
think
just a
that probably
timeline.
drove
Yeah,
traffic
it's not fully
into,
implemented.
Yeah.
into that, and there's still, to me, question about the first iteration was supposed to be a trial, and I'm not over the trial yet myself.
Yep.
Can't use trial money, got to use real money.
So what do you want, just to keep me from being like doing the thing where I ask lots of questions, that what should we save for we just want to listen to the basic update. This is where we are, and then we'll
Correct.
agree to
Yep.
have a larger conversation.
Right.
I think that is an important point, that like we're not rolling out a major expansion this summer, so we have time to talk about it.
Right.
And
Yeah, 'cause
that's
it-
like kind of the central message, right?
Yeah, because that was the big thing. If you looked at the Bangor Savings article,
Bangor
it was
Daily.
like, yeah, whatever. Thank you. Bangor Daily
Thanks,
article.
fine.
That it was more, it sounded more definitive that Camden was already doing this. And that was a surprise to me. And it was probably just a misprint, just like a misspeak when you mentioned something Bangor, something.
It's very gracious of you.
But I think it's also just important that this conversation hasn't ended. We had the working group had a meeting in October, and the conversation hasn't just died. So this update is just a where are we kind of thing. They did, the working group did put forth recommendations. The Audra is working with Mr. Burke to investigate, and I'm looking forward to how that is evolving on that end.
So are those recommendations in your memo?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So
I'll read it later
I'll
on.
read through them, just the high level ones. But I guess like, I think I just can't emphasize enough how to fully implement this and to do it successfully, the conversation will never be over with.
Right.
It will never be over with. We'll be talking about changes and updating this every year because circumstances change. We get more information about, how things are working and how they're not working, and we have to make adjustments to the program. So that's like, I know that's really hard for a municipality. We're not set up to be incredibly flexible. But I think that this is one area where, there's a lot of benefits for the town if we do this and if we commit to doing it correctly. So I guess just to get into some of the recommendations that came out of this. So the group talked about hours and dates from when the program would be in effect, and the feedback we got, and it was very helpful to have business owners on the group, was that Memorial Day through to Indigenous Peoples Day was really the period of time when it's the high season in town. And really sort of outside of those times of year, we're really just going to be charging locals for parking, which is not really the, one of the biggest intents. And it's not a time when, it's difficult to find parking spaces in town. So they identified that as the high season. So the idea would be the program would run from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that's also backed up by evidence from the report about peak times in town, Monday through Saturday. Sundays would be free. And that's sort of the hours. So, I think that
Sundays would be free.
Sundays would be free because it's not as busy in town on Sundays. So the areas where it would be metered would be Atlantic Avenue, Bayview Street. So that would be sort of where it hits Elm Street to Wilson Avenue. So that's before Bay Road. We'd have to restripe the area, but it could be extended past that to Bay Road. Chestnut Street, and that would be from Elm Street to Fry Street. Elm Street, that would go Free Street to Main Street. Main Street, Elm Street to just north of Atlantic Avenue, where you round the corner on just before you get to High Street. Mechanic Street, Main Street to just around Free Street, and then Washington Street, the Elm Street intersection to the Knowlton Street, Knox Mill area. So the off street.
This is a little much for my brain right now.
Okay, I won't.
It's a lot of streets.
Yeah. Okay, I won't go into that anymore. So the idea was, the big suggestion with that was that they wanted, the working group recommended limiting that to a 3-hour maximum. So currently it's signed as 2-hour parking. So people would be able to pay for 2 hours and then up to a third hour. They didn't think that, if the whole purpose is, or one of the main purposes is to promote turnover, allowing people to continue renewing and staying in that spot for longer and longer was advisable. And with the off-street parking, so the lots that we would consider metering, having there be a 4-hour time limit. So you'd initially pay for 2 hours and you could pay for two more, but no more than that, because again, you wanted to promote turnover. And I won't go into, there's some non-metered 3-hour parking areas as well that have been recommended. There's a recommendation, and this came more out of the report than necessarily the working group, but some sort of employee permit that could be purchased. And also having, and that would be valid for specific lots, like the public safety lot and those non-metered 3-hour spaces. Also, the free employee parking areas would be like the Knox Mill lot and other sort of residential streets where there aren't current parking restrictions that are in the sort of downtown study area. They talked about a resident permit for parking. So a seasonal permit during that time period, and it would be valid for parking in all of the paid spaces, but they would have to observe the time limits on those spaces. And there would be a administrative cost to that. So it's just what it costs us to run the program, and it would be connected to somebody's excise tax renewal. So if you're renew it, you pay excise tax and have a vehicle in Camden, you can also pay for that parking permit if you're a resident.
Every person, every resident?
That's what they
pay for it,
recommended.
like as if it's.
So the parking consultant, when I sent through the recommendations, this was sort of one he read.
I should have kept free
bold.
parking. I mean, I really shouldn't.
Well, anyway, red bold, this is going to have a major dampening effect on the revenue that the program would generate, and also availability in high use retail lots. So we would be sort of watering down some of our goals for the program, which is, managing supply and demand and pricing accordingly, and, the revenues that we could get from the program.
So is that what's going to be evaluated? So I'm hoping that somebody that looks at all the numbers and knows what's going on will then be evaluating kind of the costs and benefits of these recommendations. And
This
then
is what I've asked John to do. This is
we'll
why
have
when I
something
sat down
concrete.
to do it, I realized I can't do this and come back to all of you with really good information on what your options are and what are the implications of the different recommendations and decisions that you might make in regards to this program. So,
right,
so
okay.
John's he said, okay, yep, I can do a pro forma that looks at, this sort of, resident permit where you pay $30 for your sticker and you can park free in these places, still observing the posted time limits. So he'll give us a
Okay, like
scenario that
$30,
looks
okay,
like
so
that.
something, yeah.
And he'll give us a scenario where it's a little bit
Okay, not
different.
free, but like.
Because he said, there's also, you could have anyway, he's got other
So we're going
suggestions.
to get to look at all that in a
Yes.
comprehensive way with
Right. And
a
I
written
guess that's,
document and.
yeah, so that's kind of, this update is just to give you these are sort of the parameters that I gave to John that he's going to take away to do more work, to come back to us with recommendations of, financials, all of that sort of information. So some of the other sort of discounts or free parking promotions that we talked about were first 15 minutes free at all spots for everyone. Talked about the first citation for Maine residents each season being a warning. He also cautioned about all of this too. And valid Maine veterans plates being, and handicap plates being free parking. So those were the
The handicap
stuff that was talked about by the
Well,
committee.
Answers about that.
So handicap is, that's the law.
Well,
We
we've
can-
gotten,
we
there's
can-
been some different stuff. That's what I wanted.
So,
is like
okay,
a
yeah.
document
Can
that
I,
just-
can I just
the
give you the,
rules.
so we're not speculating about, so that was another recommendation, is that all handicap spaces, regardless of whether they're on street, because yes, it is law that those have to be free, or in a parking lot, which those don't have to be free, are
Oh.
free, to just like clear up the confusion and have that not be an issue. So that was the recommendation around that. For citations, staying the same with the exception that there was a preset in the parking enforcement system that we bought where it was like, I think it was 48 hours and then fines doubled. That's a very.
That's the biggest problem that I'm facing.
That is a very unrealistically short turnaround time. So there was discussion about, giving everybody much more time to pay their fines. I think it was like a week at the very least. For
Wait,
that.
it needs to be way more than that, but could that,
That's
that's the
good
kind of thing
note
that should
to
come
put
back
down.
to
Yeah.
us.
Yes. Yeah,
And
right. And I think that might even be something that is all part of the traffic code.
right, that's where people are, and even I'm getting confused. Like, this is the paid parking and this is just the changes we made to the fees and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in terms of, I'm trying to think of if there's anything else. Those are really the recommendations that were made by the group. There's some other, I've gone back and forth with John since then, and he said that most municipalities now are not doing meters for every space. It's like kiosks for both on-street, off-street parking. So that'll be the recommendation, that you're not metering every space, having kiosks. Trying to think
I
of what
can't decide. I
else.
don't know. I'm not good at using any of them. I needed the app.
And that's, yeah, those are kind of the major parameters that he's working off from right now.
So I had Audra come in and talk to us about this because I've had a lot of questions that I think what she has said gives me something to now go forward. Since we've talked about it in public as at the select board level, I can now recommend it to and say, this is what we're looking at. This is what we will be having a larger discussion on. So,
And no changes until
right.
then.
Right.
People aren't going to be surprised. It's going to be like it was last year.
Yeah.
And input is still being accepted and there will be a larger
Yeah.
conversation. I'm looking forward to a document that kind of says all these things that I can point to rather than having to tell people to watch a meeting or different things like that. So I also think making sure that we have the staffing that can, handle the type of, if we don't want everything to be coming back to the select board to have to be flexible, like in general, just making sure that we have staffing to handle all of this technology and responding to people. And it seems like it's oftentimes a bigger, we don't want Spencer to have to be the spokesperson for parking planning in America, or just making sure we have, like there's a lot to it. It's like, I feel like it's at like the transfer station, the people that work the line there end up having to explain like
I know.
whether recycling is good or not, or you want to be able to say to somebody, go to this spot on the website, you can read all about it, and then you can complain to Audra or inquire. But
Does anybody else have any more quick comments? Got the wheels turning. Sophie, do you have anything to add? Nope. Okay.
well, it's kind of will be a relief for some people. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to being able to be like, oh, nope, no
I agree.
changes.
I think it's a great wheel turning. This is what is going on and what we're talking to the consultant about. It's not as scary as I think everybody's worked it up in their head. So
It's a change, but I think that it's going to be beneficial for Camden. I think a lot of other places that have done this, they've actually found that it's easier to park in their communities, and they're seeing a lot less traffic from, we're taking 30% of the cars off the road that are just like circling around looking.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, my dad says I just don't go downtown during the
know.
summer. Like he's just given up, but he would like to be able to, he would pay for that spot right in front of French and Braun. Like he would like outbid everybody probably, but.
Sponsored, no. I think the group worked really well and really hard, and had a large discussion on trying to make it what I call citizen friendly. Camden resident citizen friendly. It's a work in progress. And I look forward to hearing more from the consultant on what his recommendations are. Talking about a workshop, how does everybody feel about a workshop? Or do you want to contain it into a select board meeting?
Could we do the workshop once we have something to look at?
I wouldn't recommend we do it until John's done with his.
I mean, there probably is a
Right.
lot that we could just be forced to read and then talk about that too, but it feels like we're just going to end up saying,
So
maybe we could tie
have-
that to whenever that is ready, the next document, then we could have
What's that?
When is that?
When John will be done. I'm not exactly sure when he'll be done. I think probably within the month he'll have the pro forma ready.
And
for
maybe
us.
at the end of the budget committee stuff.
I was
Is he
thinking like
incented?
April or May.
Is he incented to
Yeah.
go with the parking program?
Maybe the
We've
budget
had-
committee.
Or is he,
well,
if he says, no, this doesn't make sense for the town.
He's already said,
Because-
yes, it makes sense for the town. That's in the 2022 study.
Right, now, was that done after the bump outs and the removal of parking spaces? That was?
Yep.
In the busy season or only in the fall?
It was done in the busy season and the fall. Yeah,
So what's the lead time to get the equipment?
180 days.
Okay. So that's by when we need to have a decision.
Yeah.
So 180 days from Memorial Day 2025.
I would say that it would be, given
At least.
how, as soon as we've got the pro forma and everybody feels like they have enough information to make a decision, I think make a decision so we can move forward with it. We've got funding available. You have the authority to do it. We just need you to commit to making a decision.
Unfortunately, we're just so popular. Like it wasn't as big of a problem when lots of people didn't want to come to Camden, but everybody keeps working on it. More people wanting to come to Camden. How are we going to figure out how to allocate the parking spots between all the people that want to come to Camden? We've been experimenting for years with just reminding people and kind of trying to take turns and hiring somebody. I mean, it's the way the free market works sometimes.
I heard from a lot of people when I was having lunches downtown that they're so glad that Camden did not have parking, and that's why they left Bar Harbor and stayed here longer, because I didn't hear anyone say it would be great. to have.
I gotta say, Bar Harbor is not hurting from paid parking. They've made
Far from
more,
it.
their retail, like they have boomed. And that was one thing that the manager, I spoke to them before we even considered this. And he said he pulled retail data from the state to try to prove to everyone that it wouldn't have an impact. And it absolutely did not impact restaurants or retail or lodging or anyone. It was nothing but beneficial for Bar Harbor. I think that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of people think about what is this going to mean for me? I need you all to think about what is this going to mean for the entire community, not just now, but generations from now. That's the important thing that we all need to consider, because it's not just how you feel about paid parking, it's what it does to the fabric of our community. And we've made a lot of decisions over the years where we could have had, more of what we love in downtown and less of what we don't like in strip mall type development. And because we prioritize free parking, you just need more and more and more of it to meet demand, which means you have more and more and more parking lots and garages and that sort of thing. And before you know it, the fabric of your urban environment has been eaten up by parking. It's consumed your land use. It could be used for public open space. It could be used for affordable housing. It could be used for all the things that we say that we want and that we need in this town and we need more of. And it just becomes parking lots. And there's a lot of big parking lots in downtown Camden that are very underutilized. And that was a direct result of our land use policies. So if I could point to one policy that has destroyed towns and cities, it's paid parking. Or I'm sorry,
Free parking.
unpaid parking.
Unpaid parking.
Free parking has destroyed towns and cities. So, and this is just a best practice, fundamental, anybody who's done any sort of like land use planning education, this is like a first thing that you learn.
Because, yeah, all the businesses, there are so many businesses in town that have longstanding grievances because they were forced to provide, just to be able to open a business, they were forced to provide free parking based on a formula associated with their business that is based on the idea that everybody who's going to go to that business is going to be driving a car there. And then they're like, well, a lot of people aren't even going to need a car to come to my business. And so it's like building in a huge cost for them to have all of this parking. And then people, since they were forced to have a parking lot, then they don't want, another business to have free parking. And at least we have done away with
The minimums.
some of that now.
Right.
And that was huge. That was a
Right.
huge change for the town. And it was
Was-
really suppressing new
I think
businesses.
that might have been the first real start of this change of mindset.
Absolutely.
Right, that we're going to better
Absolutely.
utilize our shared resources and street, really, instead of trying to keep everybody off of the street. So it's like, no, we're going to make sure that we can use all this public space and share it among businesses.
And the parking group did a great job of trying to keep the citizens in mind while we're rolling this out. It's going to be a live working program. I'm assuming and hoping that it actually comes to the select board every year for revamps. Quite honestly, I think it should be something that is looked at and touched.
Like the
Maybe
fees.
not every
Yeah.
year.
Well, no,
but
no,
at
you'll
least
have to.
every
You
2
will have to
years.
make tweaks and adjustments
Right.
every year, particularly in the beginning,
Right.
Right.
because that's the only way it's going to, be
And the group did a
responsive.
great job with keeping the local citizens, keeping the thought that this is such a huge change. And
Also, we really need, we're hearing from a lot of people, or at least I do, that like they're really worried about their taxes, especially with
Right.
the revaluation. I know some people are going to go up and some people are going to go down. It's not going to mean everybody goes up. But a lot of people are going to go up, especially in that lower price bracket properties, because the $8 million properties haven't increased that much. And so we're being asked, I feel like, to come up with ways to help reduce that burden. And there just aren't that many options. So
does anybody else have any last comments? Sophie? I will say that I know that we keep saying go listen to meetings, but that meeting in October, I think would alleviate a lot of people's concerns that I'm hearing. And it would be a great thing. When you're out on your walk, pop in your earbuds and listen to that. It really, I think, will alleviate a lot of people's concerns that are coming up from that. And I look forward to hearing more.
Yes.
And that parking page, I'd forgotten about this. Maybe you updated it, but it's got a lot of links to
Right.
all the different stuff, and I think some of the meetings too. I don't know if that meeting, that
And
October
there's
meeting.
been a lot of
maybe need to
excellent
add that to
research
the-
and journalism lately on this that has really brought it
Oh,
to the
yeah.
forefront. And yeah, I mean, if any of you listen to podcasts or, radio interviews, like listen to some of the stuff that's come out recently. It's really, really excellent at it's sort of linking all of these issues together in regards to free parking.
All right. The last item is the adjournment.
I was going to say, what? I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? So moved.